All right, so here's your patch highlights. A little bit of nerf to the big hitters. Champions that have been too strong. We did a little bit of a binge on Tahm kench, and by the end, we are feeling pretty unstoppable on that champion. So definitely needed to get nerfed. Nilah's another champion, Senna as well. Both that benefited from the slower format, but also now that we saw a Nilah Senna lane finally make it into the world's stage. And it absolutely dominated because getting your support to level 6 at 6 minutes and 20 seconds into the game is actually a pretty good ability. I think everyone would agree. Now, talking about this time of year, right, and what they tend to do, the first champion, kind of indicative of what these patches are for. The whole season gravitates towards an arcing meta so that they can have one meta game at MSI, and then they can move to another one at Worlds. And I, for one, personally don't like this. I don't like that they orchestrate and they try to go for target numbers. You know, we have that clip of Freak saying, you know, we want to hit a 70% engaged support metagame benchmark. We want to hit a 10% carry jungler. We want to, you know, like he wanted to go and hit specific benchmarks for different types of champions and also the most fun champions to play. Zyra Khan, Kaisa, Silas, Akali, that those champions make it to the forefront, Aatrox as well, that they make it to the forefront. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. Leave a comment in the description below, but I wish that they would just try to balance the game. But that said, that's for the competitive season. So we're talking January to May and then June to October. Now, as we go into preseason, this is where they can give some love to champions that don't get picked in pro. And so you're going to see champions here that will get a little bit of love. Like, let's see if Morgana can play in the jungle. Let's see if Brand can be a mid laner. And they try to give some extra loves to these guys so that people who are one tricks or just big fans of the champion can have a time of the year where they can succeed. This also tends to be a highly volatile time, which is why we're doing that how to learn new champions bit, because you can get a lot of MMR by abusing the changes, right? These champions are going to be highly skewed, especially once we get into December. So make sure you guys like and subscribe so that you're ready when the preseason does hit, because if it's anything like last season, we're talking about mountains and valleys when comparing the champions and the items and everything like it. But anyways, getting into Brand. Brand is getting an extra damage modifier for the jungle. His conflagrate is going down by 5 early, but up by 15 late and gaining 10%. So this is a huge buff to Brand. It is going to make him better at doing the things in those mid and jungle lanes. The problem is that you still just have this hit-gated weakness where you have to be a mage, walk up, and land 2 spells for you to ever do anything, and realistically get a third. Makes it very, very difficult to play this champion. I would only ever do it if I had 3 tanks on my team that could play in the front line and make my job very, very easy. And as a jungler, yes, you can clear faster. In fact, you can get out of the jungle by 305 now, which is quite quick. But again, if you don't snowball your advantage, and they've kind of gotten rid of the snowballing mechanic in a large way, then it's very, very difficult to play with this. Now, one thing about Brand that's nice is he plays with Dark Harvest very well, and Dark Harvest is an endgame scaling rune, so in this slower format, you have an opportunity to get those stacks way, way higher and potentially get an impact. So if you're going to go, I recommend going in that pattern. As far as mid lane, this monster modifier impacts mid lane as well, because sometimes when your jungler goes bot, for example, let's say your red team, and you clear your wave, jungler's gone bot, that play is going to be done regardless of what happens with you, and there's no dragon. There's no reason for you to go join, is what I'm getting at. Well, sometimes it's best to go take raptors. And the ability to go and one-shot those camps can actually be really, really important for your ability to play. So like Anivia post-level 6 can use her ultimate plus a Q, and as long as she has a little bit of AP, she can kill that camp very easily. Ends up having to cast 2 E's on the Crimson Raptor, but it allows her to continue playing the game. So those modifiers will matter in those senses. Briar was completely overpowered for a long time. Hopefully you guys got your abuse in. They basically finally recognized that the what's it called? Like kill switch, certain death, right? Certain death definitely meant certain death. It was overtuned. It could get you into a lot of trouble if you used it in a bad time. It could be fantastic if you used it in a good time. Now that people are done, I won't say done, but there's less inting with the ultimate going on. This champion is truly shining, and completely taking over so many games. She's losing some 5 points per rank on her Q, which is pretty big, and then armor reduction also going down 6%. So this is the ability that you tend to max second because of the improvements that you got. Now all of those improvements are getting gutted a little bit. I don't know that this is going to change whether or not you want to take it as your second ability. Generally, you still want that W for the frenzy effect, but it's definitely hitting the champion in general, so you're gonna have to be way more cautious about your uses, and we're not gonna have that big explosion later. Also, certain death, this is a big nerf here. Losing 25 then 50 damage at rank 16, also losing 35% bonus AD scaling ratios. So later in the game especially, we're talking about this being 100 extra damage easy that you're missing out on this ultimate. So now there's more instances where Briar's death will be certain going in. She's still going to be fine. You still want to play her into compositions where they're going to be forcing around objectives, so that it makes it very easy for you to join the fight. You also want to have someone like Ornn or Lissandra that can help set you up and get you into the pit with some lockdown, right? They lock down your target, you hit your ult, and then you can join in. Dr. Mundo, they're walking back half of the change from last time. He's getting a little bit of love. Mundo is someone that's going to benefit a lot in this environment where there's more tanks. We spoke about it, the slower format, and the fact that they nerfed all of the damage or stat scaling runes like Conqueror, etc. Grasp was not touched. Grasp inherently got much stronger, which meant all the champions that play Grasp got stronger, which means champions that are good against those champions also got stronger. So the Shen and Mundos of the world are also having a little bit of a heyday. Mundo was enough to get nerfed. He's getting some of that love back. He should take over as one of those best case scenarios for playing against other tanks and just going where you're going to be the alpha if it's an HP versus HP battle. Gragas has a pretty meaningful change here. Getting a change, this is big for Elite, getting used to this as well. The cooldown refund on hit on your E, changing to 40% of your remaining cooldown, so you no longer have those like big tricks that pros were seemingly pull off, like how are you having two E's this quick? Instead, we're doing it, well, they did the math out for you here. Instead of being a 3, it's turning into 5.6 down to 4.8, but that's assuming that it's at the like full extent of the cast of the cooldown. Let me reword that. All right, Gragas. No. Okay, let me reword this. Hitting used to bring it from down by 3 seconds. Now it's bringing it down by 40%. So it's actually significantly better. There weren't the double casts. I don't know what I was just saying. I confused myself. 5.6 down to 4.8, extra reduction. This is big. This is a huge change for having extra abilities available, especially since this is his #1 tool in laning phase. Explosive cast going down by a 1/20th of a second as far as its travel time. This is very important for the highest level where people have about 150 millisecond reaction time. That tends to be the edge of human reaction time. Most people are around the 200 or closer to 250. Where this is actually a pretty meaningful difference, right? If you're not reacting to it until a 1/4 of a second, so basically this had a 0.3 second window, now it has 0.25. That's going to be a big difference for being able to react to it. So definitely want to get used to the times where Gragas might try to cast it and get ready to dodge it on your own. Graves, another big benefactor of the jungle changes. The quick draw was giving his armor, and the companions were getting extra scaling off of armor, so they're cutting that by 2 per level. Now this is actually pretty massive early in the game because it's half, right? This is a big difference. Your ability to stack this goes down by 50%, which is huge. Later in the game, where this resistance is has diminishing returns, it's not going to be as important. But this level 1 should make for some windows where we have some matchups that are now going to flip over, where they can start fighting against Graves because you won't have as much of those resistances. Janna, I got a bone to pick with Riot. Hashtag Riot, please. They have this whole slew of stats and differences to the champion to try to regain some of its old identities. The biggest ones being that the attack range is going up by 50. There's a whole slew of changes going into mages in general where their attack windup is improving. This is like consequential right here. 22 to 20 is a pretty massive change. This is how far into your swing you actually throw your projectile so you can start doing other things. This is very important for laning because when you go to poke, let's say you're walking up and you're doing W plus attack, you want to W attack and then you want to be here, you want to already be moving away because you don't want to present a target for as long. Those things are improving. However, this kit is getting significantly worse, guys. Significantly worse. They talked about changing a playstyle where she can be more proactive and going up and, you know, poking you in the face and all these abilities, trying to bring back old power, but like making the mana cost this high, increasing the cooldown this long, right? Decreasing the shield duration by a second. Also changing the cooldown as well on this. Like and look at this, rank 5, it's 3 seconds longer. That's a big deal, guys. That is a lot of downtime for Janna where she doesn't want to be attacking, right? You attack in lane phase, you're not attacking in the end game. So overall, it seems like they tried to bring this champion back, and there will be a little bit of a growth pain as people just get used to the fact that she's completely different, but she is completely different. This is much more about walking up, hitting people with your W, getting the extra empowered, tailwind bonus damage, tailwind being attached to her passive. Her basic attacks and W now deal bonus damage equal to an amount of her bonus move speed. So she's definitely going to be scaling up with speed. You want to have this. It means Shurelya's battle song is going to be really nice. In general, you'd think. Except when you're casting Shurelya's, you're not trying to hit people with auto attacks and you're only getting 1 W maybe in the fight. You don't always get this. So it's just completely changing the playstyle of the champion. It's going to feel really bad for a while. So I would stay away from Janna unless you are just a aficionado or just a fan of the champion in general. Kassadin, they're changing the required bonus health for the minimum cast time. This is very important, especially for elite play where they're trying to use all of their uptime as much as possible. They brought it down from 1800 to 1200. Now it's going back up to 1600. So you can expect to have this by the time you finish your second item plus your level bonuses. You don't need to incorporate something like Warmogs into your build to get this. Just use your 100 health that you get per level plus the items. So you should start seeing this around level 9 or 10 in your games. Kassadin, another big benefactor of the slower game pace. So he's losing 5% on his scaling on his E. Not that big a deal, right? You're only casting it a couple times in a fight anyways. You do cast it more than once because of the inherent cooldown based on like how much fighting is happening around you, but losing 5% is pretty small. And the Rift Walk at the base level, which is basically never the one you're trying to cast, is losing 10% AP, and that's it. So this is a little bit for your last hitting. Your pattern in lane is often to have 3 points in E and then go for your Rift Walk and try to one-shot the minions, the casters especially. I don't think that will change with this 10% missing, but that's something to keep an eye on. But certainly you just want to have 2 or 3 points in your queue if you're playing against another control mage where you want that extra shield and you're using it defensively, poke back and mitigate some of their damage, but you absolutely still want to be maxing your E so that you have good wave clear and so that you can use your E and your R to clear the waves and get your roams on. Nilah, absolutely massive champion. This champ is so broken inherently, and while they're nerfing her, they're not nerfing the things that make her broken. So if you have a duo, absolutely abuse the Nilah combinations. There's a lot of them. You can do Nilah with any enchanters, with Senna. You saw that lane at Worlds, and it completely annihilated the opponents. The biggest benefactor is your support, all right? So your support hitting level 6 in the 6 to 7 minute window rather than 8:30 or 9 minutes into the game is such a big change. If you're playing Nilah, you absolutely want to go into practice tool with your duo and just count which minions actually get your level up spikes, because if you know it and your opponents don't, you can get free kills. The Formless Blade is losing 10% on the bonus attack speed at the highest ranks. The Apotheosis is losing 32% scaling on the bonus AD. It is a chunk, but again, it's not the biggest part of what the champion does. It's about supporting your support, making them really, really strong together and benefiting together. Rammus, they over-nerfed him. They gave him back some of his power. They're giving him an extra 10 on his base stat on his defensive ball curl. That'll be nice. You can still one-shot the Raptors early in the game, so no big deal there. Senna, another big benefactor of those longer games, although she's much more of a snowballing champion. She wants to get a lead and then press her lead with her extra range advantage. They're taking away 20 from her end value on her heal and her damage, which is pretty big. I'm surprised that they're going this hard on her. It is going to impact that Nilah Senna lane that we spoke about, which, you know, finally got played. T1, thank you for giving us a showdown there. But Senna's still going to have some strengths. Senna and Tahm kench were ridiculously strong this past patch. That's going to go down back to close to where it should be. You should still have a lot of fun if you're playing Senna. Just make sure that you have someone on your team that can present as that frontline pivot for you to cast your Qs off of. Seraphine, last one. You can check the last patch where we talked about Seraphine and how they were trying to completely change her based on where people like to play her, even though she was designed as a mage. And it just kind of shows how tone deaf the people balancing the game can be, where they create a champion, they try to create an identity, and they try to go into an identity rather than just making a champion that is good and fun to play and letting the players decide where to go, right? You can design her and say, we planned on her being kind of like a mid lane mage, but the players like her in bot. You know, that doesn't mean you need to change her stats so that she's a bot lane champion. It just means people like to play her bot. Maybe that's where she's best. And so they went through this whole change, this whole skew on everything, ended up just universally upping the power level on the champion. So it didn't accomplish any of their goals. So now they have to walk back a significant amount of these changes. We're talking about getting a little bit of base damage onto her note passive, but losing 2% AP scaling. This is a nerf at every situation in every game. The Q high note cooldown is going up by 1 second early, which is significant because it's the ability that you're spamming. There are a lot of situations where you want to put 2 points in this by level 3. Sometimes you want to have all 3 spells. Most times you want to have all 3 spells, especially since it empowers your ability to get double casts off. But especially ranks 4 and 5, you're going to notice this, where you just have to wait a little bit longer for these windows for harassing, especially in the bot wave. And then surround sound, which everyone should have been maxing, but for some reason people were still maxing E. Surround sound should have been your second max, and then after the changes last patch, Q should basically be like a 2 or 3 point wonder, just enough to clear the waves, and then the W is by far the best effect. They're taking away 5% on that scaling as well. Tahm kench was one of the biggest winners. This guy was oppressively strong in the top lane. They're taking away 1% of his bonus health scaling. All right, this is not a small amount because you do this action more than any other action that you do all game. You do it hundreds of times per game when you're auto attacking. So this 1% is a significant change, especially since you were very quickly getting up to 3,000 and 4,000 health. So we're talking about a 30 or 40 damage nerf. This is a big nerf. He's still going to exist and be strong against a lot of the other tanks in the top lane. You can kind of just sit on a Malphite, for example, and just say, like, what are you ever going to do to me? Anytime we trade Qs, mine heals me up for the value that you had, and I'm stacking up my acquired taste and everything about it. So still can be a counter pick, but this is a big hit to his overall performance. And anytime that we say these things, you can always go in and check and see like what's going on. Now, largely, people will have to take a moment to see and like feel out a change. But when I say it's massive, and then you go and you see this, 7% is massive, guys. Like, that is a huge change, right? Bottom lane down by 5.5%, support down by 6%, top lane down by 7%. This is a drastic change. So be very wary about champions when they go. Like, 1% doesn't seem like enough, but we saw what happened to Shen. Just, you know, this caused Expetu to go on a month-long boycott and call for a boycott across all environments to stop playing Shen because it's that ridiculous. I don't care if it's low games. It still does more than it did before. They overshot with the buffs, and his win rate was not that low. His win rate was fine before, and then it went to like 55, 56%, and then now they're shooting it down. Now this, like you said, it's a low amount of games, but still, like this is an early shot. Now, you could argue that this is just people that don't realize that the change has come into play, but that's more relevant on a champion like Janna, where they changed functionality. They're just getting rid of every attack that he does all game, and it gets affected. This is a massive, massive nerf. All right, Ziggs was another big benefactor. We talked about how the 30 splash range on his bomb would completely change the way he laned, and that you could poke more often, you could push more often, you could actually hit both waves. If you used your E on the front line, you can actually hit the Q on all the minions in the wave now, so it made his pushing just way too strong and his laning way too safe. They're taking away 4 armor so that you can get on top of him, deal a little bit more damage. His basic attack frame is going down by 1%. This is part of the changes that they're doing as a universal sweep. This is a fairly low one, less than 1%. You know, we're talking about in the arc of a swing. If this is your attack animation, then we're talking about releasing here from releasing here. It's like not even noticeable. This one's a small one. There's a lot of these small ones that exist. They will matter and people will get comfortable with them. And it is a general increase in performance on the champion, but it's not going to be as drastic as some of the other ones. Now, talking about those attack speed changes, they basically want mage quality of life to improve significantly, right? They want to make the attacking animation happen better. Now, they talked about things that what are the times we're looking for? Sorry. They talked about Karthus's lay waste, and they talked about Fiddlesticks as people who have a functional way to change how they attack, and they use that instead of attacking. But again, it shows that they don't know what's going on. The best players in the world are finding ways to weave in attacks in the middle of all those animations, right? Using animations that cancel attacks and attacks that cancel animations to try to get extra effect in. So you shouldn't be using one type of champion to say, oh no, we don't need Karthus to do it because he only casts Q. That's not true. Early in the game, level 1, your clear speed goes up by a ton if you Q, move, Q auto, Q, move, Q auto, Q, right? You can actually get an extra attack off every 2 Qs. Later in the game, you don't necessarily want to do it as much because you are potentially losing power. The frame of the attack is so slow. And by not giving Karthus the bonus that you're giving everybody else, you are effectively completely erasing it. You're saying that we don't want him to cast spells. That said, Cassiopeia is on this list. She ends up getting a buff. So it feels so weird to me that sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. Karthus and Fiddlesticks have 2 of the worst animations in the entire game, and they want to keep it that way, apparently. Missile speed also being improved, and they're trying to replace the notion that you want to have an attack speed rune. This is not going to happen. You're still going to want the attack speed rune because at every single layer, attacking at every single tier, you're going to want to attack faster for pushing waves. Attack speed is actually better than AP for pushing the waves. And then for last hitting under turret, it's massively important. And not just that, when you go up to attack somebody, if you're going into a trade pattern, if you're casting your spell, but they're going attack and cast a spell, they are benefiting by 50 damage on every single trade. So you still want that attack speed rune so that you can go up, spend the least amount of time in that animation, and then come back out so that you reduce the amount of time that they have back on you. This one right here, this is comical. I have no idea why they did this. 0.1%, this is nothing. Decreasing the attack speed ratio, but giving attack speed growth back. This is going to be an overall nerf to her attack in general, which is a little bit bizarre because she's actually one of the champions that wanted to do it the most. Anivia, base attack speed is going up. She had one of the slowest in the entire game. Annie is a case in point about those champions that want to go auto Q auto, for example, and get electrocute procs in the early game. Base attack speed going up, attack speed ratio going up, and the missile speed going up means that you're more likely to get these electrocute procs. Cassiopeia, the missile speed going up, but not the wind up, right? So this will feel better for getting the last hits without having to use your Q, but it's not actually going to change whether or not you can get a Q auto Q off in a frame. So that's what all of these are going for, right? Again, 0.1 is nothing. However, this is something. All right, 3% is massive, and not just 3%, but it's 3% on a champion who actually has meaningful auto attacks that have an empowered ability. So you absolutely want to keep track of champions like this. This is going to be a huge feels good moment, especially for laning Ivern. All right. They say something cryptic about restoring an attack animation that will be used 25% of the time. Don't really care. It's always on there on the critical strikes. I'm sure the one tricks can probably tell me what that is. But the attack windup going down by 3% is very meaningful, especially for mid lane. Missile speed going faster. Again, this doesn't really matter except for laning Karthus, who's trying to get some amount of auto attack. CS, LeBlanc, etc. You can go through the list, right? The small changes. Again, people who actually have an empowered attack, this matters more. The windup being the portion of the attack that you need to complete. Think of it when you're swinging a baseball bat. Impact happens here, and follow through matters because when you connect with a baseball, there's a moment where the things press together and then they pop off. So you do need to follow through. But the moment that the ball leaves your bat, there is no longer any need to continue swinging. So a baseball player will hit the ball, feel impact, start their follow through, and then they will start running as they drop their bat because they don't need it anymore. Compare that to swing and a miss, or you make contact. If you finish your entire swing, then you're just kind of holding yourself in place. You're much slower getting to first base. Well, that happens every single time you attack in League of Legends. You want to attack and immediately start moving. You don't want to just attack and stand there, wait for the next thing. You want to attack and then start sliding, make yourself more difficult to hit, strafe, and then attack again, because your time to your next attack won't change. Whether or not you're just standing there and doing this, or if you go hit, slide, slide, hit, it's still the same hit, hit. 3% on Rumble is really nice. Top lane is one of those places, especially where attack windups matter a lot because your ability to control and manipulate the waves. Singe getting all of these. So all of these champions getting this big bonus. Like I said, everyone that has an empowered attack is going to love this the most. Teemo, this is huge. His play pattern is poke, move, poke, change direction, constantly go in. This will affect this entirely. Also, the ability to last hit. So this is a huge buff for Teemo in the top lane. Twisted Fate getting a 4.4%. This is probably the biggest one out of all of them. Again, this champion is gated. One of his spells is actually on his auto attacks, and even you could argue his E as well. So the fact that you're able to get in more movement commands while you're playing this champion is going to be super, super impactful. Also, the ability to just get your combo out quicker is going to matter. This was a big complaint that Twisted Fate mains had, was that it felt so long. You're like casting this spell on your pick a card, and the duration of having to pick a card plus lock in, then attack, and then you had a long animation on top of that. They're basically solving that animation problem here. Xerath, another one. Huge 5% change, and he has an empowered auto attack, gaining his mana back. So there's a lot of people that are going to benefit a lot more than others. Vision adjustments. This is a huge change that they're making. The reveal radius. So whenever you attack anything that belongs to an enemy, you get revealed. All right. Not only that, but the area around you gets revealed. And it happens for 4 seconds, the combat time plus a little bit of a fade window. All right. So that's where we had this 4.5 second window. That's changing to 2 seconds. This is a big, big, big deal when it comes to attacking vision, especially killing wards. The fact that it's only going to reveal you now for 2 seconds rather than 4.5. Now, I wonder if the person writing this is testing it and saying, all right, it's like 4.5 seconds practically. Let me code it to 2, but functionally it should have been 4 and 2. So we'll see if there's a lingering moment here as well. But either way, cutting it in half, right? The amount of time that you revealed, not just that, but the people around you being revealed. Previously, 400 units meant that everyone in your bush would get revealed. Now there are some bushes where you can be on one side, they can be on the other, and you attack, and it looks like you're revealing the bush, but you're not actually going to reveal everything. So there will be some new tricks that are available for this. This is a very, very big change. Ping changes, they're still coming up with the wrong solutions. quick play launch, which will be a fun asset. A lot of people have been asking for this. Why can't I just pick my champion in my role and jump into queue and just find a team this way? That would solve everything, wouldn't it? And I think it's a good system. I'm glad that they're finally putting it in. Global language select. So if you're a little bit of a weebo, you can play Yone or Jax or Yasuo on a Japanese language filter and you know, get your game on. Mythic shop is rotating. Bug fixes. Normally, there's a lot more impactful things. There's basically a lot in here with Briar. They still haven't fixed her ability to buffer her Q. So a lot of weird things here. It's not more like the functional bits. We still have issues with Rammus, still with Volibear. There's still lots of issues with Shen as well. So, you know, they prioritize balancing for profit, not balancing for a balanced game. So they will always be lagging behind in this department. Skins and chromas. This is your favorite part. Heartsteel coming out. Heartsteel Yone is probably going to be one of their best selling skins of all time, I have to guess. And then Breakout True Damage Echo. Now, there's a lot of memes going on around like $200, but that's if you buy the single unit and you go until you reach the cap for your amounts to get this. You can get this for cheaper. I'm not trying to market for it. I don't like the idea of having... that's not true. I like the idea of having whale skins. I think there's things that people should want to be able to get to be like, hey, like, this is what I do. This is my game. Here I am. This is my thing, or, you know, showing off in whatever way. But this skin is sick. This skin has a recall animation that he's like walking on pianos while it's doing like synth harmonies as he's going. I think it's pretty well done. So I'm a big fan. I don't know that I'm going to shell out for it, but if you guys enjoy it, please let me know. Mages are going to be S tier. I think so. I think this change in general is going to be good, especially these champions that have the attack animations that matter, right? Xerath getting mana back. Normally, this put him into a huge problem because he'd have to go like this. And it was a big animation to do that, and you could get punished. And reducing that window by 5% is a big, big deal for his ability to do it. This one is absolutely massive. Completely changes the way that the guy plays out. Dopa will be happy. So will Midbeast. Teemo, I'm in love. It's always going to be the case. And then, who else? I mean, this one, it's a smaller one, but it's relevant. Ivern, 3%. That's another big one. Annie, ability to get electrocute procs off much faster, right? So there's a lot of people benefiting. So looking at everything, if we look at the review, what things are going to change from a meaningful place? I mean, this guy lost 30 to 40 attack on every single attack. That is going to be a massive, massive change. Nilah still does her broken thing. They didn't touch that, so she's still going to be good where she's good. Kassadin, you still just want to pick this as a counter pick. Cassante, they are changing, but it's a small nerf. It's a, you know, basically the time to get to that break point is going to be 2 levels later. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Graves and Briar, however, very meaningful changes to how they're going to work. Rammus and Mundo getting some love. Janna, I mean, we can call this a nerf right now. It's going to completely change the way that she's trying to play, and the values do not align. Like mana costs, you have to play this super aggressive style. It's best to go into normals games and practice that and get some amount of repetition on the new style, right? The biggest change, getting her 50 range back. That was the biggest gut shot that she had before, and that's why she had to play tornado style, was because 500 range is not enough to step up, because you just get peppered by a carry. You go up to trade and you take 2 or 3 autos from a carry, never ever worth to try to get one of yours off. So getting 50 range back is a big deal. That's her biggest like bonus. You're still going to want to play towards peel and yeah, definitely get some reps in. So speaking of getting reps in, and like we said, a highly volatile environment as we approach preseason, we want to go over this concept of how to learn new champions.